Hello and welcome back to the NAS Metal production channel here at YouTube, and this of course is another album of the week. This of course is episode number 36. So, for this week's album pick, of course goes to pretty much to me, the third album from the Rods, because I'll get into all of that here. Again, the third album in the Raw. The reason I'm picking this album, besides, of course, this is definitely one of my favorite albums from the Rods, and I'll definitely get into that. The reason is, I gotta at least pick something to kind of build up to the fact that this Friday, which of course is June 7th, and of course this is the first week of June, will be the 8th release from the Rods. That's titled Brotherhood of Metal, which again will be released this Friday on June 7th. And on that day, of course, I'll definitely do a review of this album one way or another, because it's the Rods. So in a way, since it's of course their new album, or their 8th album, will be released this Friday, definitely have to at least spotlight an album from this band, and the one of course picking in the Raw, their third album. And I'll now get into why this is probably the band's third album, because that self-titled album that was released in 1981 on Arista Records, to me was nothing more than a repackage of their self-released, their independent released album Rock Hard, released through the band's own label, Primal Records. So, again, and of course, that copy of Rock Hard, no way will I ever get a copy of that unless the band ever decides to probably repress the album, because it's pretty much most of the songs got put onto the album on Arista Records, so definitely a very hard to get record for sure. But in a way, people did hear it as titled The Rods, released in September 1981 through Arista Records, and featuring 2 additional songs that replaced 2 other 3 songs from the original album when it was called Rock Hard. But again, that's their first album. Their second proper full-length album, released in 1982, titled Wild Dogs, and definitely is considered one of the band's classic albums. And of course here, their third album, released through Shrapnel Records, because of Wild Dogs was the last album released through Arista Records, so they then signed with Mike Varney's own label, Shrapnel, which of course featured the band on the second U.S. metal comp with the song Wings of Fire, which was pretty much a leftover track from the Wild Dog sessions. So using that on that comp, so hence why signing them to here, and therefore here we are with, the band's third proper full-length album in the Raw, released in March of 1983. So, now finally getting into the album here, my thoughts. I don't know if I really need to say anything more about this album, and do you really need me? To me, this is pretty much one of the band's very best albums, probably definitely after Wild Dogs. This is just a great foot-stomping, steam-rolling, hard-rocking metal album. This is just a great fucking album. Everything from the production, which of course is the reason why the album's called In the Raw, because of the album is definitely, just that. It's raw. It's not it's underproduced in places. Carl Kennedy, definitely, of course, the drummer here, of course, best known for producing for a lot of the other bands, especially on the Megaforce label. Just gives this, just brings everything. It's got a real live feel. Everything just sounds completely good, with songs such as Hurricane, Can't Get Enough of the Fun, Witch's Brew, which is definitely kind of harkens to, of course, and sound is very similar to David Feinstein's own late cousin, Ronnie James Dio, which, of course, going to a brief history here. David Rock Feinstein is the cousin of Ronnie James Dio and was also an original member of Ronnie James Dio's former or early band Elf, and played on the very first album. Of course, leaving the band after that before Richie Blackmore took Elf and, well, fucked him. You probably can get the hints after the very first Rainbow album. So with that, back to the Rods here. David Feinstein left Elf and later on came back with his own band, his three-piece, basically contending with another three-piece over in Europe titled Motorhead. So at this time, pretty much kind of also being one of the first American new wave of British heavy metal bands because of, they came in while being from America, definitely could be seen as one of those that exploded alongside that classic British movement, and the Rods definitely feel like a band that could have been from Britain. Because it's got that sort of new wave of British heavy metal feel, but in an American style, just like with another New York band. That's, of course, Riot. Or even over in Canada with Anvil and so on, and those bands. Or Y&T maybe over from San Francisco. All these bands, so it's like the Rods kind of fit in with that sort of stuff. And with this sound, you definitely get that again. So I went on the tangent there after talking on the song Witch's Brew, which again has that sort of rainbow feel to it. Definitely another nod to his cousin. Of course, back to the classic no bullshit rockers like Go for Broke, which has almost a slight AC/DC feel to it. Hot Love, which has a very early speed metal feel to it, though at times reminds me more of Van Halen in a way. But it's still a great rocker. Hot City, kicking off side B, another great track. Street Fighter, Evil Woman, Hold On For Your Life, all being other great tracks. And then, of course, Another Night on the Town, pretty much paying another homage to, of course, his cousin, which, though, definitely sounds like very similar to Man on the Silver Mountain, but still, it's still a great song, and I still love it. So that's kind of a brief sort of rundown of this sound, because of I can go on and on, but there really isn't much here to say other than this is just classic, good old hard rock and metal from, of course, the Rods, and definitely just lives up. And you can kind of tell that the album in a way does have a live feel, because of they definitely bring a lot of the energy that they did, I guess, on their live presence, their live shows, and just brought that energy into the studio here, and with the production just in a way kind of brings that in, and definitely good. Of course, after this, they did release a live album after this, just titled Live, which is also a good album, though definitely a lot more raw than this one sounding, but it's still a very great release. There is not a bad album within the Rods discography. There's not a bad album. Every one of these albums are all fucking great. I even did a band, when I used to do my band of the week, which of course, album of the week here rundown, was pretty much a spin-off, just a continuation of that, but still, I did a band of the week years back on the Rods, but here, since I'm doing album of the week, I have to definitely spotlight the Rods, of course, with, of course, their new album, Brotherhood of Metal, being released on June 7th. I definitely had to. This is just a great album. Definitely a underrated band for sure. Just everything about them. And also I should bring up a little tidbit, or a little fact. Fifth album, titled Heavier Than Thou. The vocal, that's the first one, the only album with David Feinstein not doing the vocals on it. It's the first one to also feature, and the only album to feature ex-Picture vocalist Shmulik Avigal, who of course sang on Picture's Diamond Dreamer, which is a classic fucking album as well, and definitely just as good as anything from the Rods here. If you like this album, haven't heard Picture's Diamond Dreamer, and you like the Rods, that is a perfect album for you. It's just like pretty much just as rockin' as this, as that, though a little more Saxon feel, but the Rods and Picture Long are definitely similar to bands like Saxon and so on. Just great, almost biker metal. Just great stuff. So with that, I can go on and on with this, but I think right now I'll just leave it at this. The album In the Raw is a classic album, not an easy album to get a hold of. I do have an original here, holding in my hand an original shrapnel pressing. It's the only copy I have because getting on CD is going to be a little bit difficult until somebody decides to reissue every one of their catalog as maybe a box set, or someone just gets the rights to these and just reissue the albums that haven't been and put back in print. Anyways, so that's that. Can't wait for the new album. It's definitely going to be good. It's the Rods. Also with that, I know you have heard the sound, and if you have, you can definitely leave your comments down below. Definitely also leave your thoughts on what, on, I guess, your excitement or whatever of the Rods' newest album. So with that, this is Heavy Thrasher Sam out, and I'll see you all later, definitely within this week. So, hope you all enjoyed. Take care, everyone.